One of the questions I ask the board right now, how long is your typical board meeting, roughly?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
How much time's on student achievement? Percentage, just guess?
Well,
Well, it depends
We
on
have-
the time of the year.
but our principals give us written reports, which are usually pretty good. So
So
if you
yeah,
want to
they-
read all those, I
if they would
suppose you
present
spend
those
10,
to us
15.
verbatim, then our meetings would be double, and then we would say half the time we spend on student achievement.
The reason I ask is, almost everything in a district is more exciting than student achievement. iPads are more exciting than student achievement. Basketball and hockey are more exciting than student achievement. The hard part is boards really have to discipline themselves to spend more time on achievement. Because without you guys taking a black crayon and drawing the outline, administration doesn't know how to color it in. I don't want you telling us how to write curriculum, but I want you to tell the administration very clearly what you want out of the curriculum realignment, so that from 30,000 feet they get it. Because they're supposed to continually come back to you with blueprints about how to get it done. And the more articulate the board is either about drawing the black outline or sticking that stake in the ground, the faster administration gets to work. So the concept, though, is without some real push from the board on achievement, it's really hard for administration to go back to staff and say, you need to do something different, or you need to do something uncomfortable, or we have to make some changes here. When the board gives them that right, the whole system's in order. But it's really hard for administration to push down any changes if the board hasn't really put the pressure on administration to get it done. Page 4, very quickly. Micromanagement piece. This came from School Board Journal. I really like this. I'm a big fan of the American School Board Journal. I think it's a much better read. It's the best board read in the country for any organization that I belong to or work with. On the top, this is a 2-page article. The top was, do you answer these questions? Yes, and if you do, then you're prone to micromanaging. And then down here, very quickly, I read some research about 5 years ago that says 80% of people that get on school boards have leadership, management, and supervisory experience. So it's not like people just fall off the turnip truck and want to get on a school board. They actually come because they know how to get stuff done. How many $1 million is your budget?
42 million.
Real quick, how many people here run a $42 million business outside of here? Anybody? Of course not. These are really big entities you're running. And it takes a while to figure out how to actually run it from 30,000 feet, because the really interesting stuff down there about 6 feet off the ground. I have one board that runs a $250 million budget, the city council, and when I got to them, they were talking about the length of wood screws to fix a wooden bridge on a county road. Okay, well, we've got people that can make the wood screw decision for you. We've got some talented people here. Just a quick note, I don't assume you're micromanaging, I just lay this out as something for you to kick back to if you get there. 5, this is a cool article. Sources of board member and administration conflict. These come up the most, and under dealing with personnel matters, that is also, again, oh, you're the new board member. Well, let me tell you where all the skeletons are buried. And community complaints. Oh, by the way, Dr. Kiergaard is, cutting up pigs in an altar. And I think as a board member who got elected, and you want to be of help as a leader, the hard part is sort of not getting too bogged down in those things. Board members, have these been, and by the way, and your prior superintendent, Kathy, was here, let me think, when did Lindbergh land? Kathy was a student of mine at state. I mean, she was here forever. She has a very long-serving soup. Have any of these been issues in the past with administration in terms of causing conflict? And if so, which ones?
Well, I would say they all are all the time.
Could be. These cause conflict on a regular basis?
I think there's, yeah. I think when you have, but I don't see that as negative. I mean, negotiations. We successfully negotiated, but you can't say that there wasn't administration conflict or conflicts amongst teachers when we settled those negotiations.
Mm-hmm. But this is real specific to around this table, around issues regarding the district.
I thought you meant between the board members and administration.
Yeah.
I would actually say probably between board and soup,
Oh,
to really narrow this down for you. Have these been issues in the past? Thanks.
probably a couple of them.
Yeah, some of them.
Well,
Which ones are hotter?
well, our evaluation system
up to a couple years ago, Jerry had not received an evaluation.
Okay.
And the first evaluation happened in 2011. And that format was decided that really didn't match. It was very difficult for board members to fill out.
Okay.
So then we tried a new, we have that one again. Now we're trying a new one that we shared with Jerry in 2012, the summer of 2012.
And along with that went the goal setting.
And
For
that,
his-
right,
yeah,
and
his
this
job.
year we do have goal setting. We have specific goals
Excellent.
laid out, and those do talk about student achievement. As your example earlier in this conversation was talking about, well, as a board, we need to push student achievement. Well, this board has pushed student achievement onto Jerry through the evaluation system
Good.
and his reporting to us.
And everything flows downhill.
That's why we hire quality people to bear that load. I will tell you that most school board associations across the country have a very elementary soup evaluation. It's called the autopsy. 1 year later, we tell you how you've done. There's no CEO on earth with a board in a privately traded company that gets evaluated once. We'll talk in a few minutes about how to make that a little more regular. The ones that you've passed over and not had conflict with, congratulations. But these are the items that come up most often that really get boards and administration sideways. I only give you this so you can see where the red lights are before they come on the dashboard. Let me show you four very quick pieces on why some school districts are more effective. You can see the date on the bottom of page 6, and it's old, but I'll tell you why I like this. It has huge statistical rigidity. This is actually a statistical measure of measures. So more than 50 research studies of highly effective schools were analyzed statistically, and these 7 items came up as the top of the list. You can see the frequency base on the right there. These are the items that actually drive student achievement up. And the reason I give this to board members is I want your discussion to go over these items, not firing a basketball coach or changing a bus vendor or, the bread contract. I mean, those are all necessary evils that have to happen, but these are the elements the levers you step on to jack up student achievement. So I wanted to by the way, board members, should you be interested in this or some other topic, you do what the North Branch Schools does. North Branch says, hey, administration, we need to know, we see a trend here, based on the data you've shown us, that behavior in our schools is harder and harder and harder to manage. We'd like you to get out ahead of it. So 9 months from now, we need about a 4-page white paper about what you anticipate doing in the future to change how behavior is handled given our diverse economic and socioeconomic base. So bring us a paper that makes us smarter, because we're going to have to help make decisions on it in the future. You know more about it day to day. So 9 months from now, bring us something that makes us a lot smarter on this. It is absolutely okay for boards to hand out and ask for work. Hey, we need to see some more numbers on that thing you're putting together. Show us how this is going to align to curriculum. Show us what superintendent evaluation ought to look like. When a board asks for models and gives themselves 30 days to get smart, they do better work. There are boards, however, that just enjoy making a decision. I'm going to suggest to you that you've got enough of a system here where you can literally say, bring us something 90 days from now so we're smarter on it. We keep moving. Page 7. Page 7 is an interesting piece about why some teachers are more effective than others. And the research isn't perfectly a parallel for administration, but I want to show you something. Here's what this research says. We can take every teacher in the district and measure him or her on 2 sort of mental conditions. One is control, okay? So we could have teachers that are highly dominant or highly submissive, okay? Dominant, very clearly going to get what they want. Submissive, very so passive that people around them decide things for them. We also have another mental health continuum, and this is these guys use the phrase cooperation. So highly cooperative and uncooperative. So what's interesting is teachers that are right about here are incredibly effective. This is so predictive of success that 2 teachers teaching the same grade or same subject, the teacher who's more dominant and more cooperative has higher scores in his or her classroom. It's a monster predictor. Now, the reason by the way, let's think about the opposite. Oh, by the way, dominant doesn't mean a jerk. Dominant means, by the way, my name is Mr. Miles, welcome to my class, homework glows in the blue tray. Open your books to page 17, I'm really pumped, let's get going, this is good stuff. When you think about the most effective teachers and coaches and advisors you had, they were probably very cooperative and very dominant. And also, heard you got a job, heard you got a car, heard you got your license, you see your parents for Thanksgiving. That's the cooperation. We can get along with individuals and groups. Here's the issue. When boards and principals push a lot of change in districts, people that are highly cooperative and dominant get it. These are high flyers. The idea here is, if I've got a teacher who can work really hard and get along with people, they have a higher capacity for change. Now, down here, uncooperative and submissive. So I don't know what I want and I'm kind of pissy about it. See, now that's kind of a bad model. I'm not suggesting you have any people like that here. But in a place where scores aren't working well, and there's a lot of financial considerations, and there's been a lot of change pushed down from the boards, you don't hear from these people. These are your healthiest staff. You're going to start to hear from some other people. It doesn't mean they're wrong, but for the kind of change you're trying to make happen in this district and what you're faced with, I want you to start making sure that you're screening for these people, hiring for these people, and reinforcing this stuff in the culture, because this is how you really build strong schools.
You got a note on that, Liz?
Done. Two more pieces on why some schools are more effective. Page 8 is connectedness. It's a measure of how sticky the school is. So tomorrow morning, some high school kid is going to wake up with a scratchy throat. And he or she has to decide whether or not they're going to get out of bed. And if they believe there's one teacher at the school who really knows them as a person and respects them as a person, is invested in what they're up to, they got one foot on the floor. So it's my English teacher, right? And if I also have the assistant basketball coach that I think kind of knows me, knows what I'm up to, knows what I've been facing, really knows me and cares about me, I got both feet on the floor. And if there's a third adult in the building, whether it's a secretary or a bus driver or a custodian or food service person or a para, I'm there. So this is how sticky your school is. And in places where we've got diverse populations and behavior's difficult, what you have to do is you have to have a school that's got a lot of connectedness, that's not highly exclusionary and expulsive. Because expulsion actually reduces the culture of the school and actually is shown to have a correlation with lower scores. So the only reason I bring this up is, where we have places where kids really feel invested with adults, scores go up. It's a big deal because they show up more often. Finally, page 9. Co-curriculars. And co-curriculars, it's everything from Tuesday morning jazz club to computer club to football. It's the way that we expand the length of the school day and the length of the school year with other dominant cooperative adults. Kids that participate in co-curriculars have higher daily attendance, higher achievement, lower levels of incarceration, and they're more likely to go on to college. They also use sex, alcohol, and drugs less, and they're better at every one of those in season than out of season. So when by the way, Piers, little district, little east of Little Falls, they have a 97% rate of co-curricular participation. They shoehorn kids into activities and sports, and guess what? Attendance goes up, scores go up, mental health goes up. The three biggest predictors of whether or not a kid graduates include family income, and schools have a weak but positive effect on that. Second, reading level, and third, co-curricular and activity participation. So again, the reason I'm giving you these is that as you look into problems like these, it's okay to administration say, could you bring us, very quickly, 2 one-page summaries on that? Liz, if we're really going to make progress in that, could you bring us 2 one-pagers on what goes on in districts just like ours with that? Because you're going to be asking for a lot of money. Can we get some best practice to show that it works somewhere? Jerry, what you're suggesting might work. It might be a great way to market the next levy. Can you bring us 2 one-pagers so we can think through it and have a discussion before we get ready to act? When boards delegate down to administration for the work and the summaries they want, they do their work faster. Board, what might you ask for in the future? What might be something that you need a little bit of backstory on, maybe in the next 90 days?
One thing that comes to mind, just sitting here listening, is what percentage of our population that are the ELL students and so forth, our Somali and our Latino population are in extracurriculars.
Okay?
I think we've talked somewhat about that, but I would guess it's fairly low, the percentage.
Could be. Bring us some data, let's maybe make some guesses. Maybe we'll pound a stake in the ground on that one at some point. I see there's not a lot of caffeine being knocked down, only a couple of you are really taking it. What else might you ask for in the near future? What else would help you with the job?
We need to understand for the SIG that's happening in our elementary school and being mirrored in the other elementary is what has transpired during first quarter and half of second quarter. Because December is when the first report to the state is due. So that will require documentation.
Administration, what might you tee up in the near future? What might you bring to this board so they're ready to do some great work in March or April or May?
Well, couldn't it be anything on that less than positive column?
I hope so.
Yeah, so whether it's building size or DLL or Title I and whatever else.
Sure. And what happens is, if we're not careful, we end up wrestling around down on the ground on this stuff and not staying at 30,000 feet. The Moorhead board is the best board I've ever been worked with, or that I've ever worked where people literally sat across the table. You know what? I see why that's an important question, but I worry that's too low level. Could we take this discussion back up to 30,000? The group goes, oh yeah. We inadvertently got down to the micromanagement. Now let's get back up and start talking about what we want to have happen, not how to do it. Because it's what you want. They help you with how, if you will. I'm going to keep moving until people ask questions. How's that sound? Page 10. A very simple piece on what boards need to do to see if they're doing their job right. These items are what we're supposed to be doing, and a board could literally do a self-report card anonymously online. So on board superintendent relations, how are we doing as a board? A, B, C, D, F, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On financial management monitoring, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or A, B, C. So the problem I think with boards is that people come and work really hard and spend a bunch of time, and they don't ever really do a tune-up, or do a checkup. And I'm a big fan of boards quarterly doing some sort of review, and not just around the table in the 11th hour, because we know it's 11 o'clock, and if we all, if we go real quick here, we can get out of here. But start a meeting or start a work session with, how are we doing on these 4 things? These were the goals we set. Or how are we doing on this list? There are a number of different things I can provide if you want it. But the idea is, without some attention to how the engine's running, you just keep racing the car. And you will do good work. You won't do great work without doing some self-review. Same correlation goes for the soup, page 11. Here's another piece on soup evaluation, or on one piece on soup evaluation. I'm going to deviate a lot from MSBA and give you a little different picture here. I believe that the board has to evaluate the soup on 3 things. How is he or she doing on the strategic plan? How is he or she doing on their job description? And how is he or she doing on other stuff? All the other stuff that we sort of can't measure, if you will. And I think you have to do 3 feedbacks before you get to evaluation. So every 90 days we do some feedback. Hey, here's what it looks like. And then here's another 90 days. Feedback. Here's what it looks like. And here's the feedback. And then finally we compile all that with the 4th one. Then we've got evaluation. You're running too big an organization to have the CEO evaluated once. I think you give feedback 3 times, very specific feedback on how are he or she doing on job description, strategic plan, and then other things, and then you just keep moving it along. This is a real live animal as opposed to just something you do once a year.
With the full board, the full board does this with the superintendent, or?
I'm going to tell you it's your call. I believe it's a board discussion. I don't know if it should be, I'm not sure it should be just 2 people. Because really what you're saying is the district moving along? In terms of the stuff we identified, is the district moving along and all this other stuff? And then is he or she actually performing this 98-page job description we gave you on the way in the door? And it's never just all A. I mean, there's always work to do. But when there's something not getting done, there's 2 questions, right? What's the board's role between now and 90 days, and what's the SOOP's role? Board, you've been so far up at 100,000 feet, I haven't had enough direction. Or board, you've been so close to the ground, you're not at 30,000 feet anymore.
Do you-
So there's, for everything you want to see fixed within 90 days, again, there's two possibilities. Jerry does something different, and the board does something different.
So do you close the meeting then to discuss a person's performance?
I am not an attorney, and I think that's a question that you have to decide for yourself. Personally, I think if you're talking feedback, that's different. What's your take?
Be careful.
Well, the concept, though, doesn't have anything to do with, you're talking about a concept and a strategy versus,
But if you're actually going to sit down and discuss somebody's job performance at the table,
Well-
we close a meeting for that.
right, but if we have to or we don't have to, that is what it is. What he's talking about is we need to do that every 90 days
Right.
going forward. So whether we have to close a meeting or not is kind of a mute.
No, but I'm just saying, can you, or is he talking about just informally sitting around here saying, hey, I think things are going great and da-da-da-da-da, you know? Is that like you're saying, you seriously sit down and review all of this?
Sure. I'd like to see, just like we do one of those self-assessments of the board evaluation, is financial management monitoring. Monthly, we receive a report on financial management. I think monthly, our agenda should include strategic plan. And how are we doing on those goals? What are our tactics and who's responsible and how are those milestones being met? And what are the challenges and obstacles that that are happening? And so that's where it becomes an ongoing evaluation, not per se of our superintendent, Jerry Kiergaard, but of the process and the role of the superintendent and their responsibility to that plan. So that's why it's not informal, because it's scheduled.
Right.
And it's very specific about what we're asking about. But it's regular. And that's something we do not do.
Marissa, what I'm hearing you suggest, to me, almost sounds like this has some clear expectations between our superintendent and the board, so that on 4 times throughout the year, 3 times throughout the year before we get to an evaluation, our superintendent knows these are the things the board's looking for in my report. And can be shared, and we just got to know that each, spread this out over the course of 3 meetings. This is the meeting, Dr. Kiergaard, that we want to know, how are you doing on, where are things at in these areas? If we're doing it in those terms, then I think we're okay. I would echo a little concern like Sandy has about, we don't want to get into the nitpicky things of an evaluation, but I think if we're talking about, here's where our goals are,
Right.
Jerry can come back and say, here's where I'm at, here's how things are, here's what I need from you. It sounds like a communication opener. And we can keep it at 30,000 feet throughout the entire process. And I think it is something we want to do around the main table, because I think it's way too easy for just a couple of board members to sit back in the weeds until the very end. Or it doesn't matter which board you're on. The ones who are going to come up with the negative comments are often the ones who don't ever voice the comments throughout the course of time. So to be able to have that open dialogue, is that somewhat close to what
It
you've seen
is.
in other districts?
And I also want to say that you do want to have, when you're done with your strategic plan, you want that on the agenda. So the first item under old business is, where are we on the strategic plan? Where are we on goal 1 and goal 2 and goal 3 and goal 4 and goal 5? So this shouldn't be a stranger. And again, I'm giving you the rough outline. You color it in the way you want, should you want to, or if you want to. If you need to ask legal advice from district attorney, you go at it.